Welcome to Peter's podcast, where we talk about real yoga, actual happiness, and deep living. Thanks for joining me. Namaste. This is a special episode of Peter's podcast called What Peter's Listening To. In the 1980s, I lived in Los Angeles, where I was attempting to be a professional musician. Music and to some extent visual arts was my life since I was a kid. Although while I was in LA, I was doing lots of different things just to make a living. And I was doing yoga eventually as a way to stay sane through all that. But I'm jumping ahead. One night, while I was not a yogi, I went to hear the pianist Ahmad Jamal in a small West LA club, and I had an experience listening to him that would really influence my life and is probably why I am a yogi. Jamal, who sadly died this month, in fact, in April, was a flamboyant improviser. He would roll up and down the keys, and he would move all around the melodies, and he was very content to have a song just have the slightest connection to a recognizable melody within what he felt was the art and inspiration of his music. But to me, he was just spinning magic. I was overwhelmed during the concert with a feeling that I would now call samadhi, like a transcendent experience, just overwhelmed. And you could call it something along the lines of blissing out from the experience. I realized that I had those experiences quite a lot in music and in seeing certain kinds of art, being immersed in it. And I decided to try to find out how to have more of that experience. By 1983, I was practicing meditation and yoga, and somewhere along from my introduction to it into the next handful of years I started to realize that yoga practice, and I'm talking about the yoga practice that includes meditation practice, was a technology for having more of those kinds of experiences. So I never really lost my love of the arts. And about 10 years ago, I wrote a book called Yoga for Artists. Yoga for Artists provides an introduction to yoga for artists of all media. So it sort of speaks in an artist's language about the practice and about what one could expect from having a yoga practice. I still make photographs, which was my ultimate visual art practice. And I still occasionally play music. But I listen to music constantly. And the other day, while I was making a podcast episode, my colleague Katrina Repka asked what I was listening to. Katrina's question kind of pushed a project that I'd been thinking of, this project, where I had been thinking about making playlists and somehow annotating them. You know, you can make playlists on Tidal and Spotify and probably other formats that I don't use at all. But the thought was to somehow publish these and make notes on them, sort of my own personal DJ project. But Katrina's question gave me the thought that I could use this platform for that. So if music is your thing, listen on. If it's not, you don't have to. This isn't music for yoga. It's just music that makes me move toward bliss. And maybe in one episode, I'll even share a yoga class playlist as well. I hope you enjoy listening to the songs I'm about to present and that it brings you some bliss too. Because of the laws of copyright and licensing, I can't play full cuts on the podcast without going through a lot of rigmarole and expense. But what I'll do is I'll give you my critique of the songs I'm about to include, and then I'll leave links for those songs on Tidal, which is my favorite for reasons we can get into another time, and Spotify, which is, of course, probably the most popular of the platforms. But you can also just look these songs up on whatever form of streaming you use, or if you have a good CD collection, maybe you've got all these songs. So, to begin, Winter. Winter is by a New Zealander, a singer named Phaser Days, that's her stage name. And like a lot of music I know that's new, as opposed to the stuff I grew up with, I owe my introduction to Phaser Days to KCRW in Santa Monica, public radio station. They have a 5 songs weekly newsletter. This tune, the production is super cool. It has a great musical character, and it has a sweet lyrical sentiment about a love that's not quite right yet. There's hope in this one. Next song, Closer to You. I've had this song in wear out the record mode. And for those of you who don't know what a record is, it's vinyl. And if you played vinyl records for too long, you used to wear them out. So even though I've only streamed this record, Claro, the author of this song and the performer, started as a kid in her bedroom, got famous with a witty feminist video called Pretty Girl, which I would recommend you go check out on YouTube or somewhere. I'm just catching her in her adult phase, and this song is from the album called Immunity, which juxtaposes real vulnerability in terms of the lyrics with some pretty hefty music beats. This song make you tap your foot. Next up on my song list is Dame Love. Another KCRW introduction is Girl Ultra. And I appreciate that this California public station is introducing me to more Latin artists who I would have more challenge finding otherwise. I love this track because it's just super slinky. There's something about you, something. There's something. Esperando tanto tiempo para ser más que amigos, no miento. Sentado en la sala contigo. Next up, a bit bittersweet, Mood Swing. I was a fan of Luscious Jackson when they were popular, and I was intrigued to learn that my wife Wendy was college roommates with the keyboardist Vivian Trimble, and Trimble passed away this month, sadly, way too young. Mood swing, I can't let you in. You bring me up, you bring me down. A mood swing, I can't give in to your subtle wiles and your endless smiles. Next up, My Hair. Great title. I can't stop listening to Ariana Grande's voice. One of my students along the years turned me on to Ariana Grande, but I never paid any attention to her until recently, and I just can't stop. This song is just one of a handful of her hits that I have on various playlists. Her song's lyrics seem to all have one plot: get into bed, which seems limiting given how amazing her tunes are, her production is, the vocal genius in the way she orchestrates and layers her own voice on top of it. I recently read that Grande is a very active philanthropist. It would be cool, Ariana, to hear you singing about some other topics in the world. Besides making it with your boyfriend or somebody else's boyfriend. at least some of the time, right? But, what do I know? Ariana Grande is probably the most popular recording artist in the world. So she's clearly doing something right. Next up, Yeji. Super cool music. Her voice is so much fun. And this tune has a really nice lyric sentiment for a young artist who just played the main stage at the Coachella Music Festival, the biggest music festival in the world. The sentiment is, am I noticing the good stuff or just taking it for granted? It's a great song. Next up, Woodstock. Woodstock. I'm a lifelong lover of Joni Mitchell's jazz era, starting with Court and Spark. Her tunings of the guitar, weird tunings, created harmonics, structures that most of the people she was working with from the 60s didn't really understand what to do with it. So she started using jazz musicians who understood these non-folky harmonies she was using. The band of this 1980 live album, which is called Shadows and Light, features one of my favorite guitarists, Pat Metheny, and bass god, Jaco Pastorius, who died way too young. Though on this track, all it is Joni strumming away. We said we're stardust. We're golden, and we gotta get ourselves back to the garden. Edith and the Kingpin is a Joni Mitchell composition. This track is a tribute from an all-star tribute album produced by and with keyboardist Herbie Hancock. It was sung by soul goddess Tina Turner and has a sax solo by jazz god Wayne Shorter, who played often with Joni on the road and in record, and sadly who we lost also this year. The big man, he's not listening. Love Song. The vocalist Melody Gardot's gorgeous cover of a song from Elton John's Tumbleweed Connection, written by Leslie Duncan, if you can follow that path. I knew it from Elton John. I always said when I first heard this from Melody Gardot, wait, I know this song. It was from a really old album of Elton's, but not written by Elton, interestingly, but rather by someone who worked with him a lot. This particular production is so lush and so quiet and so powerful. It includes the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra on it. It wows me every time I hear it. Do you know what I mean? Have your eyes really seen? Next up is Stand By Me, a classic pop song. I discovered the vocalist Dominique Fils-Aimé on a playlist offering from Tidal. Her song Birds is like a sound effects record, and I've been listening to it constantly for the past year. Her awesome vocal presence is just as good on this record, but the song is sort of special for me because it's what every cover should be, an attempt to upgrade the version that we already know and love. She does that here with a minor key, major key playfulness, and adds in a beautiful choral arrangement, which she also uses in many of her other tunes. Stand by me in the sky that we look upon. From the Morning is a cover of Nick Drake, and Shannon Leigh's delivery is even more mellow, if that's possible. She plays with the time at the end, just like stopping and then starting up in a totally different kind of mood instrumentally, and the whole track is really lovely. And I once torn from the ground, The Way It Will Be is next, keeping with the singer plus guitar mood. Gillian Welsh is always in my playlists. She takes what sounds like it should be bluegrass and slows it down to a crawl and then adds musical complexity. I don't know how her songs have such a richness to them. Her lyrics are always brilliant, and this song is no different. The title comes out of a line, "The way you made it, that's the way it will be."
What did you want it to be? You said it's him or me. The way you made it, that's the way it will be.
Willow. I have to admit, I never paid any attention to Taylor Swift's music until about a month ago. And, she was so much in the news with her concert tour, and so I started giving her a little bit of a listen. And to me, she's kind of all over the place. But I'm liking getting to know her better. She's very talented. This song, to me, has a more of a niche unto itself, as opposed to many of the other pop things she does that seem to fall into other categories or where she has more company. This one's sort of more uniquely her, I think. But again, I'm no expert on Taylor Swift. I just like the song.
Yes, I know wherever you stray, I follow, begging for you to take my hand, wreck my plans.
Falling Fast. KCRW again introduced me to Rosie Frater-Taylor last year. This now 23-year-old singer and guitarist is making the rounds of the London jazz scene. She's fun to follow on Instagram, where you can see some of her signature moves. She sings along with her guitar soloing, which is a technique that one learns in jazz improvisation, to think it before you play it. She does that in a gorgeous way. She also uses claps and finger snaps from some of her partners in music, and she sings really well, layers harmonies, and has a lot of emotion in her vocal. This particular tune is a collaboration with a percussionist named Miale Mansansa, but Rosie Frater-Taylor already has 2 albums out under her own name that I've just been listening to a lot. They're both great. She aims for a blend of Joni Mitchell and Pat Metheny, but she manages not to be a copycat of either one. She has her own style altogether.
Your ways are too late. You're falling hard.
Next up, Don't Know Why. I put Pat Metheny next to Make Rosie Frater-Taylor Happy. Metheny is adept in so many jazz subgenres, and he's creative enough in his arranging to make workhorses and old standards sound fresh, where they might be just elevator music in the hands of someone else. This tune is best known from being the hit from Norah Jones's first album, Don't Know Why. Next up, When Sunny Gets Blue, Norah Jones. Norah Jones is somebody else that I have to say I never paid attention to. There's so many great jazz vocalists, and when she appeared on the scene, her voice just didn't appeal to me. 20 years later, though, I'm kind of paying more attention to people who sing in a quieter, more ethereal kind of way, and she slides right into that category, and in fact probably could be credited with starting it. So although a couple people I'm playing later had something to say about that too from a lot earlier. Anyway, I'm liking her. I'm giving her a listen. I'm glad I am. And she's a pianist as well as a vocalist, which is definitely something less common. And I like her piano playing on this tune a lot.
She breathes a sigh of sadness, like the wind that stirs. You go to my head.
You Go to My Head. Julie London is a singer I discovered on an audiophile chat thread. I don't know how I didn't know about her. Like so many singers through the 60s, over the trajectory of her albums, she morphs from jazz into pop. But this song shows off the sultry seductress, and I really like the way that she presents those kinds of jazz songs. So this one is just gorgeous.
And I find the very mention of you like the kicker in a julep or two.
Body and Soul, Sarah Vaughan. Sarah Vaughan is my favorite singer. This is from an album called Swingin' Easy. It's from earlier on in her career, not sort of, I don't know, middle career, and she has her trademark vibrato and her trademark meanderings. It's like her arpeggios always go somewhere unexpected. And in this record, they're very lightweight. Her voice doesn't have some of the weight that it has later on in her career. The song is just gorgeous.
Body and soul.
Lush Life. Talk about morphing. Nancy Wilson made an album of jazz standards and an album of pop songs in the same year, 1966. This particular song, Lush Life, is a rite of passage for singers. I adore 3 or 4 versions of it, and this cut is definitely being added to the list that includes Kevin Mahogany and others. This track is also really cool. It definitely sounds dated because of something really wonderful that's on it. And it's the way that arrangers in the 60s created these fantastic orchestrations that really showed off and augmented the vocals.
They've been washed away by too many through the day. 12 o'clock days.
F It, I Love You. Back to the 21st century. I've been enjoying Lana Del Rey for, 5 years, thanks to WFUV. And Norman fucking Rockwell is an album of hers that is full of songs I really like. This particular one has awesome lyrics, including the title. A Recipe for Gathering Again. My former yoga student, now a teacher, preacher, Lindsay Sandwald, records and performs as Iggy Dean. This powerful track, written in the midst of COVID-19 restrictions, was her longing for a time when people could come back together on the dance floor. I got to experience that moment this month in Bushwick for Iggy Dean's latest performance at the House of Yes. Hari Guna Gao. I figured I can't get away without at least one yoga-based song, and Jayutal is my personal favorite in the world of kirtan. The mantra of this kirtan track means to sing to the sustainers of life, Krishna and his feminine counterpart, Radha. The album that this is from reprises Jayutal's big rock kirtan album, Shiva Station. It's called the Return to Shiva Station. And the Return has a much more intimate instrumentation. It's very lovely, a little quieter. I like this particular reinterpretation of those songs the most, but the whole album is beautiful. And finally, I'll end where I began, with Ahmad Jamal. This is from his album Ballad, with the standard What's New. Twists and turns, stops and starts, bliss and blessings. I hope you enjoyed that. Go give the full songs a listen on the streaming platform of your choice, and we'll see each other again soon. Namaste.